Many of the important materials that we rely on for our everyday lives can be surprisingly difficult to acquire. For thousands of years, humans have been digging deep into the ground in search of resources, and as technology has improved, it's now possible to mine for these resources on a much larger scale than ever before. Join me for today's video as we look at the top 15 biggest mines on Earth. Number 15. Orapa Mine, Botswana. Located near to the small town of Orapa, which is in the central district of Botswana, the Orapa mine is the world's largest diamond mine when measured by the area that it covers. It was first discovered a year after the country gained its independence, when a research team found a rich vein in March of 1967. The mine was operational by 1971 and produced almost 1.5 million carats of diamonds in its first year, a figure that's now risen to averaging around 10.8 million carats per year. The main operational area of the mine sits above a position where two pipes of igneous rock called kimberlite meet, which is almost a certain sign that diamonds will be present. The mine has proven to be so profitable that it's now been credited with transforming the Botswanan economy, with most of the proceeds being invested in critical infrastructure and national projects. After several large expansions, more than 22 million tons of ore and 44 million tons of waste rock are removed from the mine each year, and as well as producing around 0.87 carats of diamonds per ton. It's also an important place for the retrieval of ancient insect fossils as a result of a Cretaceous lake that released sediment over the kimberlite pipes. Number 14. Kiruna Mine, Sweden. The Kiruna mine is in Sweden's northernmost city, Kiruna, and holds the record for being the largest and the most modern underground iron ore mine on Earth. The scale of the works that take place there are to such an extent that in recent years the region has been struck by earthquakes that have no natural cause, and the city itself, which was originally built to support the mine, is being gradually relocated because of the risk of mining-related subsidence. There is debate within the scientific community about the exact origin of the ore deposit at Kiruna that's made up of mainly magnetite and which is part of a larger system that stretches all the way to the border with Finland. But it's thought to be solidified magma following a period of extreme volcanic activity. The ore body, accessible by the mine itself, measures about 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers long. It's up to 390 feet or 120 meters thick and reaches a maximum depth of 1.2 miles or about 2 kilometers. To begin with, surface mining was used to retrieve the useful material, but since the 1960s, sub-level cave mining has been used to access the lower parts of the deposit. In total, there's as much as 950 million tons of ore that's been produced, and it's believed there's a further 650 million tons still to go. As more rock is removed, though, the land in the region is becoming increasingly unstable, and it's expected that earthquakes and the formation of sinkholes are going to become more and more common in the coming years. Number 13. Fimiston Open Pit Mine, Australia. Often simply known as the Super Pit, the Fimiston Open Pit Mine is one of the largest open-pit gold mines in the world. Found just off the Goldfields Highway in Western Australia, near the city of Kalgoorlie, the pit currently measures approximately 2.1 miles or 3.5 kilometers long and reaches a depth of around 2/5 of a mile or 2/3 of a kilometer. Gold was first discovered in this region in the early 1890s, and to begin with, there were at least 5 independently run underground mines. During the 20th century, several organizations attempted to combine these into one and began the construction of an open pit mine instead. At first, they failed, but eventually a corporate joint venture called Kalgoorlie Consolidated Gold Mines was able to make it a reality, with work beginning in 1989. Now owned by Northern Star Resources and employing around 1,100 staff members, the mine's responsible for producing just under 15 tons of gold each year through conventional drilling and blasting techniques that moves around 15 million tons of waste rock in search of the valuable metal. Number 12. Escondida Mine, Chile. The Escondida mine in Chile is by far the world's largest proven source of copper, but this is far from a typical mine, as it's located within the Atacama Desert at an altitude of 10,200 feet, or about 31 meters above sea level. The mine taps into the long West Fissure System, which sees an almost 1,000-foot or 300-meter cap lying above a thick zone of rich ore. Investigations have shown that at the Escondida mine there's 63 million tons of copper, of which 36 million tons should be retrieved by current methods. Most of what's dug out of the ground is sulfide ore, and this is processed by being crushed and milled before a process called froth flotation is used to separate the copper concentrate. All of this is done on site before transporting the copper to the local port city, Colosso. And the method is said to be 86% effective. It allows the mine to produce 1.5 million tons of copper each year, which is significantly more than any other operating copper mines, and so significant that the mine, along with the support industries around it, account for around 2.5% of Chile's GDP. Number 11. Carajás Mine, Brazil. Located in the Brazilian municipality of Parauapebas, which is in the Carajás Mountains to the north of the country, the mine is the biggest iron ore mine on the planet. It's an open-pit mine that's owned and operated by Vale, which is a Brazilian mining company, and recent estimates suggest there's as much as 7.9 billion tons of provable and probable reserves of iron ore in the ground. What's amazing about this mine is that it was discovered entirely by accident in the late 1960s, when a U.S. Steel helicopter was forced to land on a hill in the region to refuel. There was a team of surveyors on board who noticed the distinct lack of surface vegetation, and upon closer inspection found the iron content in the rock to be as high as 66%. Despite finding it, U.S. Steel wasn't allowed a controlling interest in the site and was instead forced to work alongside Vale before withdrawing completely in the late 1970s. As well as iron ore, it's also rich in other minerals like copper, tin, manganese, aluminum, and even gold. And the entire mining operation, most of which uses automatic transport systems, is powered by electricity from the nearby Tucuruvi hydroelectric dam. The mine produces, on average, about 150 million tons of ore per year, and investment has already been earmarked to further increase its output within a decade. Number 10. Gold Strike Mine, United States. The appropriately named Gold Strike Mine, which is in northeastern Nevada, is one of the largest gold mines in the world, and by far the most productive in the United States. Owned and operated by Barrick Gold, it's sat on two deposits, known as the Betts Post Screamer and the Michael Rodeo, which measure up to 6,000 feet or 1,800 meters long, and about 800 feet or 240 meters wide, with an average yield of about 0.23 troy ounces of gold per ton of mined material. The Gold Strike Mine is actually made up of three distinct operations: the main Betts Post open pit mine, and the two Michael and Rodeo underground mines. The rock that's removed from all three of them is processed at one of the two on-site facilities, where it's milled, oxidized, and then leached, and the gold that's collected is formed into bars before being sent elsewhere to be further refined into bullion. In 2018, Gold Strike produced a total of just under 800,000 ounces, or over 22,000 kilos of gold, as well as a significant amount of silver too, figures that represent around a quarter of the total production in all of Nevada that year. Number 9. Cobre, Panama. Found approximately 75 miles or 120 kilometers to the west of Panama City in Panama, Cobre, Panama is a huge open-pit copper mine. There are an estimated 3.4 billion tons of proven and probable resources on the site, which is split into 4 zones across an area of 53 square miles, or 137 square kilometers. This makes it one of the largest mines worldwide to have been open since 2010, with works beginning on its construction in 2013. After 6 years and an investment of $6.2 billion, it was finally ready to begin production in 2019, with the capacity to excavate up to 85 million tons of ore per year. This is expected to yield more than 300,000 tons of copper each year, along with other valuable resources such as gold, silver, and molybdenum. The sheer scale of this mine is almost unbelievable, and to allow it to operate 24/7, the owners had to build a dedicated 300-megawatt power plant, as well as a brand new port to handle imports and exports. The vast majority of the electricity is used to power the 328-megawatt SAG mills and the 4 16.5-megawatt ball mills, which are required to process all of the ore to retrieve the valuable elements. And they were the largest machines of their type in the world until about 2020. Number 8. Oyu Tolgoi, Mongolia. In 2001, in the southern Gobi Desert, Canadian prospectors investigated a site that had first been believed to potentially have rich copper deposits several decades earlier, and found that in an area called Oyu Tolgoi, which means turquoise hill, there was an opportunity to develop a hugely profitable mine. The site, located in Mongolia, around 50 miles or 80 kilometers to the north of the country's border with China, soon represented the largest financial commitment in Mongolian history, and production began in 2013. Believed to hold as much as 2.7 million tons of copper, 1.7 million ounces of gold, 1,900 tons of silver, and 205,000 tons of molybdenum, the mine took 8 years to reach its full operating capacity, and now uses underground and pit mining techniques to process as much as 85,000 tons of rock per day. This results in 500,000 tons of copper per year, a figure that represents 3% of total global production and more than justifies the $10 billion cost of developing the site in the first place. Mining has become one of Mongolia's most important industries, accounting for a third of its GDP and representing almost 90% of the country's exports. But there are serious concerns about the impact this is having on the environment. With countless endangered species reliant on the Gobi Desert, expansion of the Oyu Tolgoi mine is currently restricted until adequate measures can be put in place. Number 7. El Teniente, Chile. El Teniente is an underground copper mine that's in the Chilean Andes mountain range at an elevation of 7,500 feet or 2,300 meters above sea level. It's near to a town called Sewell, which was originally built to house workers at the mine, and at its peak had more than 15,000 residents. It's believed that people first began digging for ore at the site in 1819, but it was when 2 New Yorkers set up an operation there in 1906 that its full potential was realized. By 1971, Chile nationalized copper mining, so the mine was brought fully under the control of the government, and currently produces around 110,000 tons of ore per day, which translates to around 460,000 tons of copper per year, as well as various other valuable minerals. Incredibly, these figures are not achieved from open pit mining, but from digging underground, and the site at El Teniente has more than 1,900 miles or 3,000 kilometers of tunnels. Works are constantly underway to stabilize the mine and develop new tunnels, but this doesn't come without a significant risk. It was here that one of the world's worst disasters in metal mining took place in 1945, when due to a fire hundreds of miles of tunnels were filled with smoke and 355 workers were killed, with a further 747 injured due to carbon monoxide poisoning. Number 6. Mirny Mine, Russia. The Mirny Mine, which is also sometimes simply called the Mir Mine, is an open-pit mine in the Sakha Republic of Siberia in Russia, and it's one of the biggest man-made holes anywhere on Earth. Incredibly, it has a diameter of 3,900 feet, or 1,200 meters, and reaches a maximum depth of 1,722 feet, or 525 meters. Mining on the site first began in 1957 after surveyors found a rich vein of the volcanic rock kimberlite, which is associated with diamonds. And by the 1960s, more than 10 million carats were being retrieved each year, with a fifth of those being gem quality. Of all the stones that have been found at Mirny, the largest was discovered in December of 1980 and weighed 342.5 carats. The fancy lemon yellow diamond was so impressive that it was named the 26th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and remains one of the largest in the world and is kept in the Russian Diamond Fund. The top layers of the ground at the mine were the most fruitful, and as it got deeper and deeper, the yield more than halved. Open pit mining therefore ended in 2001, but with the advent of new technologies, Mirny reopened again in 2009, but this time as an underground mine to access a much deeper kimberlite pipe. Number 5. Grasberg Mine, Indonesia. Found near Indonesia's tallest mountain in the Mimika Regency of Papua, the Grasberg Mine boasts one of the largest gold and copper reserves of any known site on the planet. The potential of the place was first detailed in a report from a Dutch geologist in 1939, who noted the presence of some strange black rocks with green coloring, and this eventually led to the development of the mine that opened in 1972. On site, there's a large open-pit mine that measures 1 mile or 2 kilometers wide at the surface, and there's also an underground mine too. It's estimated that there's 15.1 million tons of copper, 884 tons of gold, and more than 4,000 tons of silver still in the rock, and at the rate the mine is operating, it'll still be removing these valuable materials for at least another 20 years. It's such an important place for the Indonesian economy that it has almost 20,000 employees, its own dedicated roads and pipes to transport the copper, gold, and silver, as well as its own state-sponsored security force to ensure it isn't sabotaged. The risk of this at Grosberg is much higher than many other mines, though, because of the sheer impact it's had on the local environment, and the fact that locals haven't benefited much from the proceeds at all means that there are regular attempts to interfere with production. Number 4. Jwaneng Mine, Botswana. The Orapa mine in Botswana may be the largest diamond mine in the world in terms of sheer size, but the country also has another one which is located in the south-central region and holds the record for being the richest diamond mine on the planet. Known as the Jwaneng Mine, it's an open pit that's positioned directly above where 3 kimberlite pipes meet near the surface and covers an area of approximately 130 acres. With around 2,100 employees, the mine produces almost 10 million tons of ore per year, along with 40 million tons of waste rock, and because of the high ration of diamonds, which is about 1.25 carats per ton, the mine retrieves an average of 11 million carats per year, a rate that's expected to continue for at least 2 decades. As the mine was only developed relatively recently, the owners were able to meticulously plan how it would be dug, and this means it's a remarkably safe operation, having won numerous international awards for its design. Essentially, it's made up of a series of concentric circles that dig deeper and deeper into the deposit, and the main pit is surrounded by support roads and structures that allow the rock to be processed and transported away far more efficiently than is possible at older mines. Number 3. Chuquicamata Mine, Chile. The Chuquicamata mine in Chile, which is known as Chuqui for short, is in the northern region of the country around 770 miles or 1,200 kilometers from the north of Santiago. It's in a mountainous region at an elevation of 9,300 feet, or about 2,800 meters above sea level, and is the largest open-pit copper mine in the world when measured by the amount of material that has so far been excavated. People have been sourcing copper from the region for many centuries, with evidence of ancient works found across the site. But it was in the early 1900s that things stepped up a gear with the development of the first large-scale mine, and in the mid-20th century with the construction of flotation and smelting facilities on site. After more than a century of intensive mining, the open pit now measures 2.7 miles or 4.3 kilometers long, and more than 3,000 feet or 900 meters deep. And despite this, it's still one of the largest known copper deposits. Current production sees at least 500,000 tons of copper extracted per year, and with the facilities already in place to increase this by 50%, it'll remain an important part of the Chilean mining industry for decades to come. Number 2. Garzweiler Mine, Germany. The simply enormous Garzweiler Mine is in the North Rhine-Westphalia state of Germany and is one of the largest brown coal production facilities on the planet. The surface mine sits on a rich vein of lignite, which is the least valuable type of coal that's formed from naturally compressed peat. But the sheer volume that can be excavated makes Garzweiler an extremely profitable site. Incredibly, the mine currently has a size of 18.5 square miles or 48 square kilometers and uses giant bucket wheel excavators to continuously cut through the ground. Some of these machines can move as much as 230,000 tons of soil per day, and this means that the mine is expanding at an extraordinary rate. In the 1980s, for example, at least 12 towns and 30,000 people had to be relocated to allow the mine to continue operating. And even its name comes from the town that used to stand on the site, but is now long gone. In theory, Garzweiler could continue extracting coal for many decades to come, but other pressures may bring things to a close much sooner. Germany has announced plans to stop using coal power stations by the mid-2030s, and if this happens, there will be very little need for mines like this anymore. Number 1. Bingham Canyon Mine, United States. The Bingham Canyon Mine, which you may also know as the Kennecott Copper Mine, is a huge site that's on a porphyry copper deposit in the mountains to the southwest of Salt Lake City in Utah. It easily holds the record for being the largest man-made hole on the planet, as well as being the deepest open-pit mine, and it has produced the most copper of any mine in history, with an estimated yield of around 19 million tons. Operations first began at the mine in 1906, and the pit now measures more than 3/4 of a mile or 1.2 kilometers deep. 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers wide, and in total covers an area of 3 square miles or 7.7 square kilometers. This is so large that it's visible to the naked eye from orbiting spacecraft and has undoubtedly changed the landscape forever. Each year, Bingham Mine produces 300,000 tons of copper, 13.7 tons of gold, and 137 tons of silver, and almost 9,100 tons of molybdenum, with a value of around $2 billion per year depending on fluctuating prices. Unsurprisingly, it takes a highly organized operation to make this possible, so the 2,000 workers use huge electric shovels to remove 450,000 tons of material per day, which are transported by a fleet of 64 large dump trucks and more than 5 miles or 8 kilometers of conveyors. Even though so much has already been removed here, there's no sign that the mine, which was declared a National Historical Landmark in 1966, is anywhere near to running dry. An investment is currently underway to expand it further over the next decade.